Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And this is another midnight breaking news podcast, isn't it, Landon?
Yeah, these midnights are getting awful old.
Because we're awful old. I know. I can't stay up that late anymore. We didn't even we were going to do this podcast starting, right after work, like at 5 or 6 o'clock. But we kept getting more and more information because this, of course, is about the temples. Cody, Wyoming Temple and Heber Valley Temple. And so we just kept getting more and more information. And now it's like midnight. And here we are trying to bring it to you. And you, Landon, have been out of town for a while.
Yep, just got back. Did get to spend the weekend in Philadelphia. Went to an Eagles game with my son for his birthday. So wearing the Eagles shirt. We caught the plane back last night and got in at 1 o'clock in the morning. But as we got on the plane, we got the headline from Cody that's in the Cody Enterprise that we're going to cover here. And also, we knew that there was another filing coming from the Cody neighborhood with the court. And we got a copy of that. It was 118 pages, and I was reading that all the way back. And when I got done, I was like, wow, we have got to get this out as soon as possible, especially with the Heber Temple vote coming up tomorrow. And so we want to try to get this out before that. To kind of show some of the things that are happening at Cody that look very similar to what's happening at Heber. But in this case, we've got copies of the lawsuit that has texts and emails, and they are whoppers. There's some things in here that you guys are going to want to stick around to hear, because there are some things going on here, it appears, that should not be going on. And I think the Cody people have a really good argument.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I guess when we say tomorrow for the vote in Heber, it's actually today, because this will be posting.
Today.
What will be the morning for us? Yeah. And I think what you're describing is we're kind of like mail carriers, right? Hell or high water, rain, sleet, lack of sleep, red eye flights. We are still going to podcast the information because it's so important. And just, we actually have been extremely surprised by a lot of the things that we have come across, like really surprised. So enough of this teasing, right? We keep talking about what we are going to talk about. Let's just talk about it. This is an update, like I said, for the Cody, Wyoming and Heber Valley temples. And these are both, in process. There are legal maneuvering going on both sides with these temples. Ground has been broken on Heber, but nothing has been constructed yet. So we're going to start out by talking about the Cody, Wyoming temple. And we've done several podcasts prior to this. So if you'd like to catch up, after the fact, we're going to link those in the show notes. But this is going to be the most current news as of today. Okay, let's look at our first slide here.
Okay, we're going to start with Cody, Wyoming, and we're going to start with a date. Now, we just went to Cody last weekend.
We did.
The weekend before this one, and got to do a visit there. Great visit. We stopped, saw BYP on the way up, Backyard Professor. Then we went and saw Yellowstone, got to spend a day in Yellowstone. Then we went into Cody and got to spend a day in Cody. And so this is a picture of us visiting Cody, and this is the temple site here. We took a picture at both night and in the day. You can see that it looks like a wide open field. There's actually houses on both sides at the end of that. So this is a lot that's in between the two houses. And we're standing, you can see, by a road. On the other side of that road is a neighborhood. And it's kind of a hill, and you've got houses up on that hill. And this is the view that those houses currently have.
That's right. And I will say that it's not at the end of a street or somewhere remotely. It's just literally smack dab in the middle of many, many houses on a smallish road. Wouldn't you say, Landon? It's just a 2-lane, very residential, and you kind of come around the corner and there it is, all of a sudden, the open lot. And you can see go ahead.
Just before you get on that road, it narrows to a very narrow bridge. That's not a full length bridge. Now the people would be turning off to the temple right before that bridge, but it's definitely a very narrower and rural road. And it turns into dirt, just like 100 yards up past the turn into the neighborhood. So
exactly. And hardly any traffic. As Landon said, we were there at night and we were there during the day, and very few cars. Like, it's very, very light traffic residential, which of course will all change if the temple goes in there. So the one picture, of course, is at night. You can see the beautiful dark skies. Like, it's just pristine. In the picture, you can't see the stars, but it's just gorgeous, as you can imagine. And then in the day, just a beautiful, beautiful view out into the Cody skyline. And it's just gorgeous.
And this night shot was taken with a flash. We did a small video, live video or video we posted from the site where we didn't use flash, and it's completely black. You can't even see us. It's so dark out there. And Rebecca looked up and said, I have never seen this many stars in my life. It was immense number of stars. You could see the galaxy cloud. It was just incredible. And right then we said, this is not the place for a temple that's going to be lit up. This is going to destroy what we can see here tonight. It really became apparent right there. So again, a couple more shots from the temple site. Those trees right there are actually a neighbor's house. Their yard's there, and the house is just off those trees. And so just a couple shots to show you again what that temple site looks like. This was us. We went up into the neighborhood that overlooks the house, and you can see these relocate the temple signs. You can see just about every house on that side, almost every house on the other side also had these. And then on the Skyline Drive, as we drove up to the temple site, both sides of the road were just lined with signs saying to relocate the temple. It was clear that a large percentage of the people who are in this neighborhood did not want this temple building to be in their neighborhood. And again, not because it's a temple, but because what it's doing to the neighborhood and the views they have and the night sky, it's going to destroy all of that. It was clear it did not belong in this setting.
Yeah, it really had quite the impact as we drove up the street. Absolutely. It's one thing to talk to the residents. It's one thing to read about it in articles, but to actually go there, you really get the idea of what they're talking about and what they're fighting for.
And it was funny because we talked to several of the residents, and some of the residents told us the story of this Lutheran church, the Trinity Lutheran Church. This is not in their neighborhood. It was down on the other side of town. But they talked about how when the Trinity Lutheran Church wanted to put a sign in front of the church, the Cody City planner, who's LDS, who is going to be a main player in some of the stuff we brought up, how he fought them about this lighted church sign, and that it didn't meet the code, and that they had to make changes, and that they fought over this for quite some time. So we kind of took a picture of that and said, well, wow, this sign can't go in front of this church, but a 110-foot temple lit up can go in the neighborhood. And this thing's clearly not over 20 feet. I don't know why they fought the sign or why he fought.
I think he said too tall and too lit up. I don't know that for sure. That would be pretty ironic if that were the argument. But definitely pushback from the city planner on getting the sign, but they were able to get it. And it's a lovely little church and a beautiful sign. So interesting, though.
Yeah. The other thing, we passed the school there, and this is one of the arguments that we've heard as to why the temples should be allowed to have a 110-foot steeple, because they passed an exemption for the school to have a bell tower. And in this case, this is a picture of the bell tower. The school is probably about 30 feet high, about the same height as, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the temple here is about 30 feet tall. So this is about the same height. So you could see that it maybe goes as high as the second little level there is how high that bell tower goes, not 110 feet tall. And again, this does seem to meet the requirements for it could be considered a standalone structure, and you can go above the roof line as long as it's attached to the roof and part not part of the the structure itself. It's sitting on.
Not structurally is the issue. And just to make it clear, basically they're saying, hey, you know what? There's a precedence for a variance on height. Look at our bell tower, but as you can see from the bell tower, to me, apples and oranges, not at all the same. In fact, we just laughed kind of when we drove past it. We're like, that is not at all the same as the tower on the temple. And the tower on the temple is structurally part of the temple. It's not something that's freestanding, sitting on top, like Landon pointed out about the bell tower. So kind of an interesting justification. I don't think it really applies.
Yeah, I didn't think so either, but that's one of the big arguments in the thing. So, okay, well, this was the big news that came out yesterday. We're going to read through this. This is the headline out of the Cody newspaper. That came out yesterday, which would have been what was the date yesterday?
I've lost track of all time. Monday, the 24th, I think.
Would have been Monday. Yeah, the 23rd. It was my son's birthday.
The 23rd. There you go. Can't forget that.
And so we pulled that up. And Rebecca, were you gonna?
Yeah, I don't have that printed off, so I'll let you read that. I had the other letter printed off. So.
Okay. So this kind of tells the story, and we're going to get deeper into this, but it says in a draft report acquired through the Wyoming Records Act, City Planner Todd Stoll, who's LDS, and it doesn't say that, but it just want to put that, included a warning about potential legal consequences if the Planning and Zoning Board decided not to accept his findings about the height of the proposed LDS temple. He said, if you do not personally agree with the city attorney or my interpretation that the Cody, Wyoming Temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints complies with the building height requirements of the Cody zoning ordinances, please prepare to be directly questioned in court to explain your logic and conclusion and why it is any more sound than that presented by your staff, legal and planning, he wrote. This is not meant to be threatening, but simply letting you know the strict scrutiny to which your personal decision will be subject. So this is the city planner who's LDS, and he made an interpretation that the tower did not count as towards the height. So even though the building's 110 feet high, he says it complies with the 30-foot height requirement of residential areas because he doesn't consider that to count. And he's saying, if you vote against this, you better be ready to go to court because you're going to get sued and you're going to be questioned as to how you could come up with this logic and this conclusion. I'm the city planner. I advise you. I give you the codes and then you vote on it. But I'm telling you right now, you're going to get sued basically. And he's the city planner. He's not representing the church. He's representing the city. So it goes on. That warning occurred before the church filed its first lawsuit against the city P&Z board in late July. In his report, Stoll wrote that the P&Z board had adopted his findings that the LDS temple height and city code, a statement that board chair Carson Rowley criticized in a subsequent email. That is complete and utter bullshit, he wrote about Stoll's finding in an email. It was clear that we did not accept his interpretation from the lack of motion on that item, and it was clear that we wanted to still debate the tower in the temple and its 101-foot temple or steeple. Further in his email, Rowley referred to the confusion over the temple issue and the return of his anxiety, as well as his exasperation with the time-consuming process and with two city officials, Stoll, the city attorney, Stoll and city attorney Scott Kopicki. I feel deceived and that I can't trust the two people I'm supposed to, Rowley wrote. And this was obtained in emails through the Freedom of Information Act that the Cody Citizen Group got. So you can see that the city attorneys, the city planning and zoning committee are going, we don't trust the people who are giving us the information here on how to vote. Because they felt, at least in the case of Scott, that he had a conflict of interest. The cited documents, which were requested from City Hall under the Wyoming Records Act, include Stoll's draft report emailed June 16th to the P&Z board on the day after its June 15th meeting, a June 22nd email at 4:54 p.m. from Raleigh to Mayor Matt Hall and City Council Andy Quick, who also serves as council liaison to P&Z. And Hall's email response to Raleigh and Quick on June 22nd at 5:52 p.m. At its lengthy meeting on June 15th, the P&Z board considered motions dealing with the height issue 3 times, but made no decision. By those actions, Raleigh understood that the board had rejected Stoll's finding that the 26-foot tall temple topped by a 75-foot tower fit the city's building height limit of 30 feet in a rural residential zone. The church contends P&Z approved the temple and tower as proposed. The opposition disagrees, and both have filed lawsuits about the issue. So what happened is the board voted, but the board believed that they'd passed the permits and the site plan without the steeple. The city planner, Scott Stoll, who's LDS, said, no.
Is it Scott or is it Todd? I get confused on who it is. Yeah,
I'm sorry,
confusing
Todd.
To me.
Scott's the attorney. Todd
attorney, right?
Todd said, no, you passed it, and he made the interpretation. We'll get into that a little bit later as to what happened there. But he made the interpretation that no, it passed. You guys voted for it. There was not the steeple. The steeple was part of the plan, and you passed it. So regarding the draft report, Raleigh sent an email to Hall and Quick questioning Stoll's conclusion that when the P&Z board approved the conditional use permit, it also accepted the planner's height interpretation. Based on that, Stoll said the board would not have to consider LDS requests for a variance on the tower elevation. So Stoll said, no, you passed it without, we don't need to look at it. It's approved with the elevation, even though the Planning and Zoning Commission was saying, no, we didn't. After criticizing the logic, Raleigh wrote, he is to be our staff resource. He wrote the original staff report in such a way that presumed how we would vote throughout, and at the very least in the past, he has always asked for clarification at the meeting before we vote or shortly after, and we consider if we may have unintentionally conflated our vote always. So he said at every meeting, he clearly comes out and says, this is what you're voting for, so that we know what we're voting for and what that includes. And in this case, he did not do that, as if he was intentionally, that, the implication is that he was intentionally withholding how that they weren't voting on the steeple so he could reinterpret it. Instead, it is included in his updated draft for Tuesday's meeting and not a mention made to anyone. It was clear that we did not accept his interpretation from the lack of motion on the item, and it was clear that we wanted to still debate the tower item, and then it's redacted. So the city attorney evidently reviewed the release of emails, and he redacted certain things. Again, redacted in the paper, but he says, but I do not feel like I have a resource in all of this that is clearly leading me. In other words, he's saying, I can't believe any of the city resources, the city planner, in making a decision, because he's clearly trying to mislead the Planning and Zoning Board. After another redacted passage, Raleigh wrote that the issue has become confusing. His anxiety has soared and his time has been taxed. I am very frustrated, he continued. I feel deceived and that I can't trust the two people, Stoll and Kopicki, I'm supposed to. I will push through and see this through, but this is not how the volunteer board is supposed to go. How in the heck are we ever going to get people to serve on the board now? I have no idea. Last spring, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced plans to build a 10,000 square foot temple on a 4.6 acre site off Skyline Drive in a pasture north of the canal. The opposition launched a campaign urging the relocation of the temple and eventually organized as the Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods group. Last fall, the city issued a building permit for the temple, but the church hasn't broken ground so far. Components for the structure are stacked behind the YTech building on Bighorn Avenue, a company headed by the Glenn Nilsson, whose family dedicated the temple site. So the temple components are already there, waiting to go on this land. And you can see clearly from the emails that the city council does not trust either the city attorney or the city planner. Now, the city attorney, it does not appear as LDS, although he is a city attorney. He doesn't work. He's contracted with the city to be the city attorney. And our understanding is he does a lot of work in the Bighorn Valley area for the school districts in the predominantly LDS areas. And so that, take that for
It
what
could impact it. Yeah, it could impact it for sure.
in there.
Yeah, I think the whole article kind of shows just the frustration. And after the fact, after the vote, they kind of said, what did we vote for? Like they were very confused. And the whole issue, of course, is the height, which they thought they were voting to allow permits, revisit the height later, but no, it appeared to be a done deal. So a lot of confusion, feeling manipulated. And I think we'll see that as we go forward, reading some of the, where they give a legal response. Oh, there we go. Look, right on cue.
Yeah, so
it's true. A legal response is filed by the Cody residents. This is what they do next. Now, if you watched our last video on this, the city has stepped back. They are no longer involved in any legal issues with it. They basically said, we cannot afford to continue to fight this in our city. This will bankrupt our city. And so they've stepped back. So now it is the residents, the Preserve Our Cody neighborhood residents, who are continuing with legal response and legal action.
That's right. And they've actually filed two different filings in response to the church. As you remember, the church sued and they sued several times. There's like 4 different lawsuits.
Yeah.
But twice they filed over a suit over the decision by the Planning and Zoning Board. And these are decisions that they're taking the interpretation of the city planner, who is LDS. And we might mention that there's another one of the planning and zoning members is also LDS. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that too, because we see emails happening between those two, and also between the church and the city planner. And then we have emails between the different planning and zoning members discussing what happened here. And you can see that there was clearly confusion on the board as to what they were passing, even among the members even among the church member who was the one who motioned every time to pass anything that would benefit the church. He's LDS, a former bishop, and he was confused as to what they passed. So it's clear here that there was something not amiss here as to how this went about, and the emails show that. So the first one we got here, it's about 40 pages. This is the first filing. This has been filed in the court. It's public. The one we got last night is 118 pages long. I had to tear it apart.
I've never done so much homework.
Yeah, I tore it apart.
Not even in school.
Just the major emails. I'm not going to be able to pull those up because they're so, some of them are big enough, but they're so small, and they're copies of things that they'd be hard to read on here. So these packets are legally filed. These suits are legally filed. They're available for public to look at, and that is where we're getting this information that we're pulling out. So the first one we have tells kind of what the arguments are going to be that the Cody's neighborhood attorney is going after, and then the second packet really had a lot of the emails that were really, to me, really damning on how this process went about. So the first thing I want to talk about, and this is really important, is the meeting that did not happen. So it did happen.
I'm confused by the title.
It did happen and it didn't happen. Yeah, this is exactly how this kind of stuff happens. So here's what was supposed to happen. There was supposed to be a May 24th public meeting hearing on the temple and the conditional use permit and and it was supposed to be public. It's basically the same thing that happened on June 15th, where all the public came and heard what was supposed to happen, and then the board was supposed to issue a permit or whatever. But it was supposed to happen on May 24th, evidently. And here I've got the email. It's from Matthew Burke, who is the project manager for the church, it looks like. And he says, Todd is the city planner who is also LDS. So this is the church talking to the city planner, both LDS people. He says, thanks for talking with me this morning. Our request for postponing the public hearing on the 24th is to be able to give our legal counsel the opportunity to craft a response to legal objections risen by community members. We request a postponement of 2 weeks for this. So he said, hey, the neighbors are raising legal questions, and we need time to evaluate these and take these before we can come and give you a response. And so we're asking for a 2-week postponement to the public hearing. Now, if the citizens group asked for that, would they have gotten the same thing? That's a big question to ask. But so this happened on Friday, May 20, or this happened on Monday, May 22nd, is when this is going out. But evidently, he had already talked to the church about this, and this is really quite interesting. We have another email here that happened on. This evidently happened on the 22nd when they asked, but he tried to postpone.
So when you say he, who are we talking about? Just to make it clear.
Scott or Todd, the city planner, had already put out, prior to the church requesting a stay, I guess you could say, a postponement of the meeting. The city planner, who is LDS, had already started postponing this meeting. There's an email here from Todd that happened on Friday, the Friday before. So this was like on the 19th. On Friday, he let the council know that, hey, there might be a delay to this meeting that's coming up. I'll let you know. And he sent that out. And one of the members of the Planning and Zoning Committee responded and said, Todd, do we have to honor that request? They may ask for it, but this is planned. Everybody knows about it. Why are we accepting that just because they asked for it? And he said, what days are you available other than those dates, is what he responded with. And the board member says, Todd, I'd appreciate an answer to my question, please. Do we need to legally honor the applicant's request for a postponement of the public hearing? Again, he responds, when are the first few days after that you would be available? Thanks, Todd. And he responds, I'm away on business. I can't do it after that. So Todd, the planning and zoning person's asking, I don't want to postpone this. Why do we have to postpone it just because they now want more time? And Todd doesn't answer it. He won't answer his question. Instead,
and by they, you mean the people representing the church who have asked for this time.
Correct. The church side of it. That's correct. So interestingly enough, this text message goes out from Todd, the city planner, and here's a copy of the text message. It goes out to the bishops of the wards in the Cody area. And this is on Friday, May 19th at 4:42 p.m. So this is at the same time that he's letting the board know, he's out sending texts to the bishops of the ward. And it says, bishops, just talk to the temple department. Need you to hold off on reading that letter in sacrament. There have been some scheduling changes. We will keep you updated as soon as more information comes. Please disseminate to counselors if they are covering for you on Sunday. So the church had a letter, it sounds like, ready to go out on that Sunday to tell all the members to show up to the planning and zoning meeting that was supposed to be held on that Wednesday on the 24th. The church, Todd is talking to the planning and zoning board and saying, oh, we're canceling the meeting. And he sends a text to the bishops telling them not to read the letter on Sunday. Meanwhile, the planning and zoning board's going, we don't want to cancel it, or at least some of the members are saying we don't want to cancel it. And yet he's sending out things to the bishops saying, oh, we're canceling the meeting. Bishops, please announce the following on Sunday. The Cody Planning and Zoning meeting regarding the temple, which was scheduled for Wednesday, May 24th, is going to be rescheduled. Therefore, the open house on May 23rd will also be rescheduled. So he personally made the decision, it sounds like, to change the meeting, to give the church extra time to make their legal arguments against the Cody people, even without consulting the Planning and Zoning Board. And when the Planning and Zoning Board asked him specifically if they had to honor that, he refused to answer their question. And he's supposed to be the person advising them on how this process works so that they can make the choices.
I can see why they'd be confused over that. And I can see why they'd be confused that information was being given to LDS bishops that really should be kind of internally handled with the Planning and Zoning Board and the city planner together before it's put out, to the public, telling them that a meeting is canceled. That's really interesting.
Yes, absolutely is. And then he, the guy who was pressing it actually writes a letter to the mayor saying,
and this is somebody on the Planning and Zoning Board that is confused and he wants to press the issue a little bit. What's going on?
The delays was specifically asking and went to the mayor and said, this is not right. We're not getting answers, and I'm filing an official complaint that I'm not getting an answer as to whether or not we have to accept this. So he takes that very direct and takes it right to the mayor. I'm trying to find that one. I've got so many different ones here. But
you're like a mad scientist with papers everywhere. Yes. So yeah, and it is interesting to piece all these texts and emails, of course, that were acquired through, the Freedom of Information Act, but you can kind of piece together just kind of how it all is behind the scenes, where you have a board that's a little confused by what they're being told and by some of the processes and procedures. This person on the board's actually even going to the mayor saying, I'm confused, what is happening here? So it just sounds like it's a little chaotic and a little not business as usual, like something is a little off in what's happening.
And this is another email from Todd. He says, this is to the Planning and Zoning Board members. He says, this email is being sent to the Planning and Zoning Board. I'm sure you are anxious about the upcoming public hearing for the Cody, Wyoming Temple. Attached is the initial staff report I have prepared that was intended to go out to the general public today, but is being held while the applicant decides whether they are going to ask for a postponement of the public hearing. I will likely hear about that tonight or tomorrow. This is on Friday. This is the same day he's already sent a text to the bishops telling them it's postponed. He's already told the bishops that it's postponed, but he's telling them that they're still waiting to make a decision. And we find that it's not till Monday that he hears officially from the church that they're requesting the postponement, but he's making this request in their behalf. Then he goes on and asks, what's your public availability for hearings on June 13th or 14th? He basically says, I have to advertise this this meeting, and it needs to go in the newspaper by 10 a.m. to hold the meeting on either of those days. So he's writing this saying on Friday at 4 p.m. and saying, hey, by Monday morning, I got to have a decision of whether we're going to postpone this. And he basically gets to go ahead and do that and make that call. So he does it on his own, it looks like, to do that, which it's no wonder that's what happened and why they were upset.
Right. Questioning the procedure, of course. And I think anybody would, because again, it's not how typically it would happen.
That's right. So if we go through the lawsuit, we see that there's basically four arguments that the Cody neighborhood is making to the LDS claims. The first response is that the LDS church alleged that the Planning and Zoning Board agreed with the city planner's interpretation of the height, meaning that the temple, that the 110-foot steeple did not count as part of the 30-foot overall height. That was the city planner made that interpretation. in order to get this through. They voted on it, and now he says, "Oh, that's part of this." So this is some of the emails that are going about. He said, "I specifically asked that question at the meeting, and Scott K said by accepting the cup, the height exemption was still on the table to debate because I tried to motion to approve the CUP with the exclusion of the height to be debated. He said I didn't need to do that. If we inadvertently approved it because of legal counsel advice, I'm going to be pissed. I need to set up my email, damn it." So he's saying we were told by the city attorney that by voting on this, that we could still go back and address the steeple height. We were only voting for the 30-foot height. And he says it looks, like we were lied to. Another one here from one of the other members says, "Sorry for the Sunday text. You realize we're being forced to vote in favor of the temple, or we need to be prepared to explain ourselves in court, according to Todd's report on June 22nd. What's the point of a planning and zoning board then?" Scott K also threw us under the bus by saying we could approve the CUP and that the SE application was a separate thing. That's a special exemption for the video clearly states.
And the CUP, just to be clear, is the conditional use permit.
Yes.
So they were comfortable voting on that and then leaving the height requirements for another time, but feeling like they're misled by the attorney and the city planner, and kind of the vote is rushed through and they don't even know, did we vote for just the permit? Did we vote for the height? They have no idea.
Yeah, and he says the video clearly states him saying they could build a temple, but not the steeple if we vote in favor of the CUP. Then there's quite a lengthy one talking about the lights and the different things that's on there. But this one is really telling. This email, this is between Matt Moss, who is the ex-LDS bishop who is on the Planning and Zoning Committee. This is a text exchange between him and Todd, the LDS city planner, the day after the vote happened. And it's clear that Matt, the LDS person, doesn't even know what he voted for. But he's read Todd's interpretation that we don't need a special exemption, therefore the temple passes with the steeple on it. And so he's asking Scott this, and he says, "Did we pass the height of the temple as part of the findings in the CUP last night, the conditional use permit?" Then he said, and then in quote, "See yellow highlight in report, PZ already made a," so he's referring to the report that Todd had written that morning, saying that they had passed it and that they didn't have to go back and look at the temple height because that was part of the CUP. It was approved with the temple height. Then he says to him, "Can they reverse that vote?" So he's saying, can the board go back now and reverse their vote or is this a done deal? Did we vote to pass it? Is it approved with the height?
If you have to ask, and you're somebody who's voting, if you have to ask, did we vote? Did it happen? It means you're not informed and you're confused if you have to even ask that question.
Yeah, even the guy voting for the temple.
That's what I mean. He didn't even know what happened, and he's on the board who voted.
Yes, and he says that I asked Carson, and Carson is the I guess the president. Carson Rowley is the head of the P&Z board, the senior member. He said, "I asked Carson last night if I could reverse my vote to yes on the tabling of your interpretation, and he said I couldn't." So evidently there was a vote on whether they could table the interpretation that Todd had made of whether it was a steeple, and he'd voted one way and it didn't pass. And then he said, "Oh, I want to change my vote." And the guy said, no, you can't change your vote after we voted and it's approved. So he said it would be wrong for them to be able to do the same if they made a mistake like I did and couldn't change my vote. So he's saying, well, I made a vote and couldn't change it. So now how can they change their vote? But in this case, they're not changing their vote. They're saying the vote we voted for didn't include your interpretation. Now you as the city planner is saying, no, it did. And your interpretation is that you did, even after you told us it wasn't going to be. So that's the argument that they're making. Now, this is the really damning response here to me. This is Todd responding back to Matt, both Mormons. And he says,
and Todd is the city planner again.
Todd, the city planner. He says, Scott K., who is the attorney, will need to make that call. I think I had inspiration to realize it as I was waking this morning, and then had just enough time to do the report. When I finished, I had goosebumps from feeling the Spirit.
Oh, interesting.
So evidently he had an inspiration, or as some of the later emails say, he had a revelation during the middle of the night after the vote that I don't need to put this out for any more discussion. I can write the report and say that they've approved it and that it's not needed, and now it's passed and they can't undo it. And it gave him goosebumps from feeling the Spirit that he was able to manipulate the vote and turn it.
Wow.
That's the way I read this. I don't know how else to read that, but this is the, right, wrong, or indifferent. This is the feeling that the board is getting. And now you're seeing texts going back and forth. This is on June 27th, an email goes out from Andy Quick, who's the council president and planning and zoning liaison, to a guy named Barry, who's with the government. I'm not sure what his role is, but he says, "Good morning, Barry. I'm sure you've been bombarded with information, emails, and visitors regarding the temple site plan, etc., coming up today, as have I. I want to go on the record as being very concerned about Todd's behavior regarding the whole temple project. You and I have spoken in person about his possible overreach, and that while he may not stand to gain financially, he stands to gain or lose a great deal socially and or spiritually, depending on the result of this process. I believe he is too close to the project to be able to objectively address it without bias. As an example, I received a call from Carson Rowley yesterday. That is the Planning and Zoning Board senior member. He explained that Scott Kopicki, who is the lawyer, city lawyer, had just called him to tell him that Todd had a revelation of sorts and decided the site plan was actually settled and no longer needed to be on today's agenda, which is the main reason why the meeting is taking place today. Carson said this action is putting the noose around his neck, and he is very likely to resign at the meeting, along with other board members who feel like this has been nothing more than political theater." So Todd told the city attorney he had a revelation that it didn't need to go to the board. They were supposed to have a meeting on whether this tower was part of the thing or not. And it sounds like the city planner said, no, you don't need it. I've had a revelation. It's approved. And that's how you voted.
It's a done deal. When it's approved from on high, it's a done deal.
Exactly. He said, I also feel that while Scott Kopicki may have the city's best interest in mind, he has advised the P&Z board that any vote in opposition will trigger a federal lawsuit and that the only vote is to approve. I heard him claim to Carson and others that the LDS Church is the most discriminated religious institution in America. Wow, more than the Jews or the Muslims. While he may be risk averse, his approach has not addressed Todd's boldness in this project and allowances for many double standards. I want you to be aware of these issues because today we could see a meltdown of our planning and zoning board and some real public backlash if this subject isn't allowed to be addressed publicly. I do feel like it is your responsibility to intervene and require the site plan to remain on the agenda, along with the re-examination of the cup that was on the agenda and is somehow removed. So he had removed it from the agenda for discussion because he'd had a revelation that it wasn't required. So you can see that there is a lot of animosity, a lot of bad feelings, that they're feeling like they've been played and tricked and maneuvered. And we can see that it looks like Todd is communicating with the church and doing the church's bidding as his role as city planner, and that he's texting to the bishops and giving them information that is not supposed to be out to the public, yet he's giving it to the Mormon bishops to give to the Mormon wards, while not putting it out to the Cody neighborhoods and others so that they have the same information. And he's not responding to the zoning board's requests as to whether they have to do anything. Okay, the next item that they argue is the LDS incorrectly allege and intentionally mischaracterized that the proposed temple has a flat roof with the tower structure attached to the top of the roof. This came again from the city planner. The city planner said that structure on top of the temple that's 110 feet tall does not count towards the height because it's considered a tower. And because it's considered a tower and it's part of the roof and it's supported only by the roof, we don't, it's not considered part of the height. It's a standalone structure like the bell tower. And so because we approved that, we now have to approve this height. So this was an argument that came from the city planner to the planning and zoning board. It's clear from
this really is the crux of it, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah.
The area is zoned for a 30-foot roof. So there it is.
Yes.
But
and
the tower is 110, takes it up to 110. So the whole point is, oh no, when you look at it, it really still is only 30 feet, which, yeah, I have my own opinion on that, but that's the whole point. It's a standalone tower. It does not count as the height. It's as simple as that, but boy, is there a lot going on around that.
Exactly. And he's making that argument, but it sounded like the planning and zoning board members weren't buying the argument.
Right.
In fact, they go through, and in here, they actually have pictures of it where they have gone through, and the planning and zoning board went and looked at the Casper Temple, which was being built evidently with the same, under the same plan. It's the same design as the Cody Temple. And they'd gotten pictures from the Casper Temple, which clearly shows that the spire on the temple is all still structured down and built into the still structure of the temple itself.
So part of the building, not freestanding on the roof, but actually an integral part of the structure.
And in the pictures, and I didn't show the pictures because it's a black and white copy, and so it doesn't show up very good. But it's clear in the pictures that there is still, that it is all part of the still and is supported by the still, and that the tower structure goes all the way to the ground and is supported on the ground, is part of the main floor. It goes into the main floor, which means it's not supported on the roof, which means that the argument that the city planner gave for why it didn't count towards the city height is absolutely not true. So if the plans show that, and that's the way it's built, it goes down into the first floor. It also says that there's openings so you can get up to change lights and stuff in there, which means it's an accessible space, which means it's not a tower. It's an accessible space. And so that's the argument that that they are making with this. So I'm looking at a couple of these different comments here. I want to read this one too. That is, this is a citizen or a neighbor who makes a complaint to. I'm not. It's someone in the government here. His name's Andy. He says, Andy, I would like to request that Todd Stoll be removed from any decision-making capacity in regards to the LDS Temple off of Skyline and Cody. Todd has a conflict of interest. What is best for Cody and what is best for the new temple? Todd has been coaching LDS on all processes to receive a CUP for the temple. Also, Todd has delayed LDS information to the Cody residents in a timely manner. Todd is an LDS member and stands to gain if the temple is allowed to be built off of Skyline. In the past, Todd has been a protector of building height restrictions, dark skies, reduction of traffic issues, and zoning designations. All four of the issues he has protected in the past will be violated if the temple is built off Skyline. Why? Todd has also intimidated local residents on the evening of Saturday, or intimidated local residents. On the evening of Saturday, June 3rd, Todd approached a group off Skyline and started taking pictures of equipment and people during a demonstration. Todd was not being friendly, nor was he being a good neighbor. Those citizens felt intimidated, scared, violated, and unsafe. Why is a paid city planner taking pictures at 10:30 p.m. at a demonstration which is educating the public? Todd is paid to be a city planner. He is not paid to coach the LDS on the processes to get around CUP, lighting, building height, traffic burdens, and zoning. Has Todd ever helped any other group like he is helping the LDS? The answer is no. This situation is the definition of conflict of interest. Has Todd explained his interest in helping get the temple off of Skyline? Has Todd been asked if he has a conflict of interest? Please restrict Todd Stowell from any further interaction with the LDS temple. He is not acting in a professional manner befit for a city planner.
See, that's very interesting to me, because when they talk about how in the past he has fought for dark skies, height requirements, zoning adherence. And then we have that example of the Trinity Church sign that we showed, where he seemed to have been saying, oh, this might not meet the requirement. This might be light. This might be too tall. It seems like there would be evidence that he has championed those things in the past, and yet now is not. So that might be something interesting to look at.
That's exactly true. The third one is the LDS incorrectly alleges that the International Building Code, the IBC, controls. This is a claim that again Todd Stowell made, that the 110-foot tower is not covered by the building codes, and you have to follow the International Building Code. And again, the committee is not buying that argument. It seems they're saying, no, we have Cody regulations that rule in this case, that say that you're restricted to height in these areas, and that's the ordinance we're following. We're following the city ordinances, not the International Building Code. And your interpretation that this meets the requirement of a tower and not of a structure that you found in the IBC to try to argue that this should be there is just ridiculous. And so they've got several comments on this where they address this situation as well. The last one here is pretty interesting. They say the LDS incorrectly raise or attempt to argue and rely upon RLU IPA. This is very interesting because this is what they are using at almost every temple site. They come, and this is the federal regulation that they used to make the argument for that since it's a church, they don't have to follow any of the building code regulations. And the church said, and if you don't pass this, we're going to sue you because you're violating the RLU IPA. And the RLU IPA stands for Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. And they're arguing that because we're a church, you're restricting our freedom of religion by refusing to let us build in this area. And that'll result in a federal lawsuit, which we will sue the city and force them into bankruptcy to fight us because they're violating our First Amendment rights, is basically what they're saying. You're violating this lawsuit. Well, they go on to explain what the requirements of the RLU IPA are. And they say the RLU IPA does not say that you just get to build a church wherever you want. It says the church has to follow all of the zoning requirements in the areas where they build, and that they can get around it if they can show that it's a substantial burden on the church. So if to meet the codes is a substantial burden, or it significantly constrains their religious belief. So if that steeple is a requirement in order for us to worship God, we can't worship God in it unless we have a steeple above our head, then they might have an argument to make because you can't restrict that freedom. But that is not a requirement for this temple. Everything that they want to do can be done in a temple that's 30 feet tall and that's not lit to the hilt. You can have a dimly lit temple and still do all of the requirements of your religious belief inside that building.
And is it a burden of proof upon the religion to prove that they cannot practice their religion without that particular type of building that does not follow the zoning regulations or the codes? I would think it would be their burden of proof.
Well, they'd have to show that there's a substantial burden on them, and that it prevents them from exercising their religious belief
in some way. And there are temples that do not have a spire or a tower.
And there
are LDS temples that have a dome. They've got the
Karsten Temple. They've got the temple in Hawaii. It does not have one. The Mesa, Arizona temple does not have a steeple. So they're saying you can absolutely come and build a temple that's 30 feet tall and that meets the lighting requirements in that area, and there's nothing we can say about it. But the fact is, you're building something that doesn't meet the requirements, and therefore, unless you can show a substantial burden, that's not a requirement, and you can't make this argument under the law, under this RLUIPA. You have to demonstrate that, and you have not done that. And they point out that no court in any jurisdiction has ever found a zoning height restriction to be a substantial burden under RLUIPA. And then they go on to argue LDS temple builds can be short. You do not have to be a long, tall building. You do not have to be lit. They could practice their religion in a building that meets the zoning requirements. And if they need a taller temple as a requirement, then they just need to go and put it in a place that's zoned for the taller temple. Then there's no issue. But it's not allowed in a residential neighborhood. So that's the argument that is being made in the briefs. That's the arguments that are coming out. So I want to go to the last. There's hundreds of these emails, and so I'm sorry it's a little confusing because they were all over in these different exhibits, and I'm trying to tie them and make them make sense. And I know I didn't do such a good job on some of these, but
you did a great job. Are you kidding? There's so much to cut through.
The key issue is you can see what's happening here. That the argument is that we were manipulated by someone who had a conflict of interest, who should have recused themselves and did not. And they've been working with the group that was trying to get the temple made behind our backs and without exposing that. And the records release was able to prove that. And this is the last email that I want to show. This is an email, and I'm going to read it here. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if this is illegal. I believe it is, but I can't say so. I can't say that this is guilty or not, but it's certainly very, very poor form to do this. This is a text from Glenn Nilsson to Todd Stoll, the city planner. Glenn Nelson is the person who owned the property that donated it to the temple. He's the one who owns the business where the temple is currently stored. He's an heir to the Husky fortune, the person who started Husky Oil. And so obviously a big proponent for the temple going in this location. And he says, "Hey, Todd, I imagine you're bombarded with temple details and resistance. I just wanted to say thanks again for your work and give my apologies for how so many in our community act and what they say, which I mostly tune out and hope you do too. As a compliment and sincere comment, I want you to know that if your work has any fallout, you would be welcome as a real estate manager or project manager on our team the next day. God bless, Glenn." To tell the city planner who's making who is supposed to be representing the city and being neutral, that, hey, thanks for all the work you're doing to get this temple through. And by the way, if this all goes to crap, I've got a job waiting for you as a real estate manager or project manager on our team. Certainly not ethical. I don't know about illegal or not, but we'll let I guess the courts or whoever follow that. So again, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that, but that sure doesn't seem kosher to me. To
Yeah,
allow.
I have a feeling other people will be weighing in on this because this has all been filed, and I think there'll be articles coming out on this that have, that'll be analyzing this. But it seems like the person who wrote the email recognizes that what Todd is doing is difficult as far as what people are starting to ascertain is happening, right? And that there might be fallout. There might be people that are not happy with what he's doing. And so it sounds like he's trying to reassure them, you'll be okay because you're doing the right thing. So that's kind of how I read it. But I think people will analyze this, and there'll be more coming out about that.
I agree. I think he's trying to say, hey, Todd, don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't
you're
worry.
my ward or whatever, I know this is tough. Hang in there. But this is, we just saw, this is in July that this went through. So this is after he's done all of these things that we just read about in the emails. And he's saying, great job getting that through. Now, I wonder if that same position would have been open for him had he not done all these extras to get the temple approved in his interpretation. That's what the whole court case is about, is whether it really was approved or not by the Planning and Zoning Board. So this really opens up a lot of ideas, because we were confused. We're like, how do they not know what they passed?
Right.
And this
or what
is
they voted on.
they voted on it, and they
understanding.
thought that they were going to be able to come back and revisit it. And then the city planner said, no, you don't get to go back and vote on it, because the way I laid it out, it didn't include that exemption, wasn't part of what you voted on. Therefore, you approved the plan as is. Ha ha ha. It seems to be
was that in the email? Ha ha ha.
The ha ha ha. Yeah, probably a laughy emoji or something. I don't know.
Something. Oh my goodness. There's so much to wade through here. There's just so much.
These and there were a lot of emails like this. I was just reading these emails going, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Now, granted, we're only seeing the one side,
Exactly.
with the emails, but that sure seems like there's a lot of things happening there that shouldn't be happening, and that's problematic. In fact, we heard,
and again, further analysis, right? Further analysis from other people that are going to take an objective look at it, and more information will be coming out, I'm sure.
Yeah, but this is worth diving into if you're in the Cody area. This is worth diving into and finding out, was our city planner acting in the city's interest or the church's interest as part of this process? That's a question that they're raising in the lawsuit, and it's going to be interesting to follow. So we'll follow that. So, okay, we're on to Heber at this point. So, and you're muted, Rebecca. So.
Gosh, I'm sorry. Somebody was watching a game at my house and just yelled very loudly. So I thought that wasn't appropriate, and right in the middle of a temple update. So I muted. So I was saying, did we already get through Cody? And I know it was just scratching the surface there. I think, like you said, there's so much more to dig into, but we're just trying to do an update. And now we are moving on to, at the very same time, the Heber Valley Temple, which is having its own scenario and situation, isn't it?
It is. And this one is important again, because today, Wednesday, is a vote on the temple site plan by the county commission. They've had to move it to the county library because so many people are attending it. And so this is a big day. And again, the reason that we want to bring this up, and the reason we wanted to get this out is because a lot of the same arguments that we just saw in the Cody temple case, you're going to see come up from the community there in Heber Valley. We just saw the letter that the attorney is going to be sending to the city council in Heber, or the county council before they vote, outlining many of the very same arguments that the Cody people have made. This temple is way bigger than the Cody one. This is the proposed site. We were able to go to Heber a month or two ago. And this is the land where it's going to go. You can see it's in a residential, there's residential houses all around it. And the church owns the site, and then they have rights to the dairy farm next to it, that they can then build houses on that once the temple's built. So it is going to be in a residential area. The trees there are about 70 feet tall, that you see in the picture. The temple is going to be 210 feet
I
tall.
love this graphic right here. This is incredible. If this doesn't give you perspective, I don't know what does.
Yep. And this is the Tucson, Arizona temple. And you can see it doesn't have a tall spire. It's got more of a dome.
Right. And the Tucson, Arizona temple in this graphic is inside of the Heber Valley proposed temple.
That's
you
correct.
can see
That's
that
how
there,
large this temple is.
88,000 square feet. That's right. You can see that it nestles inside of it. And then as you look farther down, you can see there's the Heber Valley Town Hall, absolutely dwarfed, does not even come up to the beginning of the tower. And then you can look in the very, very left corner. There's a teeny tiny little person. You really just can't even get a sense of how big this is unless you go and visit, like we did last week, or I guess a couple weeks ago, the Landon, Utah temple, or the Layton temple. Is that the one, Landon?
Yep,
yeah, these are similar size and similar design. And you really just, it's almost incomprehensible how large these temples are. You have to go visit one.
That's right. And again,
if you're in the area, go look.
And when you put something that large in that valley, it will be seen from everywhere in the valley, because it's going to tower over everything else. And nothing else is really allowed to be built that tall, because this is 6 times the height that is allowed in this area.
I think so. It's 2 times larger than the White House, I think, or is it 60% larger, 2 times larger than the Taj Mahal? They've done some comparisons to try to wrap your head around how big it's going to be.
Yeah, and this is an 18-acre site. They could keep it under 30 feet if they spread it out rather than built it up. If they spread it out like a Walmart, you could make it 30 feet and maintain the zoning requirements. But the church we know owns politics in Utah, and they're going to push the city council or the county council to accept this. And they've got some, and they'll be successful. We all know it's a 50% LDS community. Most of the board members are all going to be LDS. The church is doing an end run around that, getting this legislative district in place so that they can get special exemptions without going through the regular rules.
And I was going to say, we have covered more about Heber in past podcasts where we talked more about some of the workarounds and some of the things that got passed very quickly. So if you want to revisit those, we'll put links to that. But one thing about the Heber Temple is that because its height is so extreme and it's right in the flight path to land at the Heber airport, is that I don't think there is actually an angel Moroni on this temple. Yeah, I will say that. This is just me being funny. There's just a spire, but there will have to be a red, and there's a question. The citizens opposing that location say it will be flashing according to FAA regulations. The church has put out information saying it will not be flashing, but it's going to be a red light that has to be up on the spire, that has to be lit at certain times of the night. And so anyway, I just went on to AI and I said, Moroni on a temple with an FAA regulation flashing light. And this is what came out. I love AI. So anyway, I thought that was funny. I like the golden plane flying over Moroni.
No,
there are all kinds of different issues.
And the church in their letter addresses this and says, we comply with all FAA regulations. There'll be a, red light on top to comply with the law. It won't affect the community. And it's like, this was a dark sky community. You're now got, and these lights are flashing so the aircraft can see them from miles away. So whether it's flashing or steady, that is what you're going to see when you look up in the sky now in this area. You're not going to see the mountain sky and that you're used to. You're now going to see a glowing white temple with a red light sticking up in the middle of your beautiful valley. If that's what you want, but there's a lot of people in your valley who that's not what they
I
want.
don't want that. That's right. And I guess you did mention the letter, and I think we talked a little bit about this in our last podcast about Heber, but the church did send out a letter through the stake email system, and it's called A Letter to the Residents of Wasatch County, although it did go to members, but a lot of people kind of got a hold of it. And it basically had some concerns and then the church's response to it. And in our last podcast, we kind of went through a little bit, but we didn't have any original documentation or anything for what they were saying, so we didn't really read everything. I said Cody residents, the Heber residents, I'm trying to keep track, have since put out a response to that, where they go through one at a time the different concerns that are brought up in the church's letter. Of course, it's, pumping the millions of gallons of water away. It's the dark skies. It's the size. It's the listening to the residents. It's things like that. So they kind of have
Traffic.
a point by point where they go. What did you say?
The traffic.
The traffic. Yes. So thank you for reminding me, the traffic. So anyway, we're going to link both of these letters in the show notes because people had requested that last time. They would like to read both because, again, the whole point of what we're saying is go look into this in your own city. You can get information. You can read points of view. You can talk to people from the citizens group. You can talk to people from the church. Let's be informed. Let's figure out what's going out on our own. So we're going to put both of these letters in the show notes and encourage you to go through to read the church's response and the response to the response.
Yeah. And one thing keep in mind is, the church has this power that it can just send out letters to the, at a touch of an email to tens of thousands of people. The Cody neighbor or the Heber Valley residents groups do not have that capacity to put those out on that scale. We've been dealing with the church, and one of the things we do is we fact check. A lot of people say you're anti-Mormon, you're against the church. No, we
No.
fact check the church. That's what we're doing. And a lot of the comments in the church's letter are technically accurate, but they're not telling you the whole story. For instance, they say on dark skies that they comply with all the dark sky requirements. What they don't tell you is they changed all the dark sky requirements to accommodate the temple so that they could comply with them. They do not meet the dark sky requirements that were in place prior to them changing them all.
For 20 years.
For 20 years.
As soon as the temple came up on the docket, petition, the county changed them.
Yeah.
So yes, they do comply now to the new ordinances. So, yeah, exactly.
And there's other things like the water where they give this is, what is being said is not true. Here's what's really going to happen. Yet they don't have to put out any information, so nobody can fact check it. So they can say this is what's going to happen. They're saying we'll put out our plan when we're required to. Well, the requirement is they only have to put it out 1 week before the hearing. So the Cody or the Heber Valley residents only have 1 week to look at this and make an argument before it goes to the county for a vote. Now, how are they supposed to get that level, something that complicated, and read it and understand it and have a response in 1 week's time, where the church has had a year to put together a plan and they know what's going to happen, but the residents don't. So the residents are saying, that's why they're saying you need to delay this and you need to give us time and you need to open it up to hearings. And we've put out we propose that you give us a hearing, and they've said no. They said, that's a great idea. On all future projects, we're going to allow a hearing, but we're not going to allow it this time.
Not this one, but going forward. That's right. And then you had an interesting observation about the traffic too. I thought that was kind of fascinating. You dug into that a little bit more.
Well, I didn't, but some of the residents there had looked into the traffic study, and it turns out that the traffic study was done with data given to them by the church. Nobody went out and did any,
independent,
how they put the box with the thing and seeing how many cars are running through it. they used data that was provided from the church, that the church provided supposedly based off of the Bountiful, Utah temple, which is on top of a hill at the end of a road. There's some conflicts in that. Like they say there'll only be like 200 cars a day, yet it's got a 400 car parking lot on the temple. How is it only going to increase 200 cars? So they've brought up the traffic concerns and even talked to the people who signed off on the traffic report. And evidently they're saying, oh, well, we just reviewed the information and approved it. We didn't look at how the study was done and how the data was gotten. So again, the residents are saying, we want this reviewed and we want to dig in and see if this is accurate or where this information came from. That's what they're asking for. They're saying we want accurate information, and county, you owe it to everyone to take your time to make sure this is done right, and to make sure that the same thing that seems to be happening in Cody through the emails isn't happening here, that every voice is heard and that everyone has it, that nobody is pushing things through because of their religious faith and not because of the laws and the codes, building codes in the area.
Yep. I think that's exactly what they're asking. Yep, that's exactly right. Okay. Sometimes people send us emails that come to them in their state. So this was kind of an interesting one. I don't know if we need to read the whole thing. What do you think, Landon? Do we need to read the whole thing?
No,
maybe just part of it.
Yeah. Basically, let's just read that last part. They're sending it out and encouraging people to show their support for the temple and sending this to their members. And of course, that's fine. If you're going to say, go and have your voice heard and say, what your thoughts are on the temple at your county commission meeting. I think all groups do that. But it's interesting. They say, we invite any church members who live in Wasatch County and are in favor of the temple to allow their voice to be heard during this process, so the temple project can be approved and construction can begin. So they, they invite members who are in favor of the temple to allow their voice to be heard. They don't say anything about any members who aren't in favor of the temple going in this mountain, beautiful mountain valley. I guess they're just supposed to keep their mouth shut and not say anything. So it's very manipulative. My understanding is that churches aren't allowed to take positions on, government actions. Now this is involving a church, so there may be some workaround, but to basically say, oh, if you're in favor, go show support for the temple. But if you're not, keep your, it's like you said, the whistling,
whistling whittlers.
Whistling whittlers. Yep.
That's funny. Well, and they do in the letter, they tell you where you can write and give support. And then they do say, be involved in the process and respect all opinions. So of course they say that, if you're going to go to these meetings, make sure that, you respect every voice, because there are lots of differing opinions. But this email says to me, we want to have a united front with the same opinion. Yeah.
Not surprising in itself, but again, it just shows. So this is the last thing, and because we've got to get this out tonight, so we gotta make it kind of quick. You want to talk about this one, Rebecca?
Yeah, and then I'll let you read it, because again, everybody goes, why don't you use your reading glasses? I'll tell you, the screen I'm looking at is like that big. I'm not kidding. Like nobody could read this. I dare anybody to try to read it. But basically, this is something else that was sent to me, and it's an invite to the youth of the stake. Why don't you go ahead and read that, Landon?
Yeah, it says, Dear youth and youth leaders of the Old Mill Stake, we've been made aware of a special gathering of youth in the Heber Valley to show support of the Heber Valley Temple. This gathering will happen on Wednesday, October 25th at 4:30 p.m. The location of this gathering will take place on the grassy area next to the Senior Citizen Center. See attached. Several food trucks will cater ice cream, pizza, soda, and snacks for the youth. This is an extraordinary opportunity for our youth and youth leaders to gather and show their support and excitement for the temple. We are inviting all of our youth and youth leaders to participate in this special event. We recognize that this may present a conflict with current plans, but if feasible, will be a rare and memorable gathering for our youth in Heber Valley. Come if you can. We love you, your stake presidency.
So this is at the same time, an hour before the vote, and it's in the same location in Heber, which is very interesting. And I also wonder, we've been made aware of a special gathering. I don't know who is putting on the special gathering or anything like that, but it sounds like it's going to be a party right there where everybody's coming in and news and everybody's going into the building to, participate.
And they're basically saying, cancel all your other youth activities, get your youth to this park to show, so that everybody walking into the meeting has to walk through our 1,000 youth and will be overwhelmed by the overwhelming support that the youth have for this temple being built, when they're really there for the food trucks, the pizza, the ice cream, and the snacks.
It does sound fun. Like, I think I might go. No, I'm not going to go. But you know
going.
what? We did talk about going, but no, we're not.
The only problem is it says that it's an opportunity for those who support it. So evidently, if you don't support it, you don't get the ice cream or the pizza or soda, it appears. So,
well, and I wonder though, I mean, the youth will be outside, and this I think is across the street from where it's all happening. I just wonder if they'll even be aware that there's this civic process going on. Is that part of the point of this? That they're going to learn something about the civic process or how the city works? That wasn't really clear on that. It just seems kind of like a fun gathering.
Well, we were told by the citizens groups up there that when they went to the last one, the church had all their members come in and they took up the whole top floor
That's right.
in the meeting, and they had to go downstairs and watch it on
right.
TVs because the church basically just orders all their members to come out and like this, cancel all your events, everybody be there. We'll even bribe you to be there to come show the support. While the citizen group is relegated to the basement on their saying. So the citizens group does have a letter coming from an attorney outlining, because the important thing to remember is that the county commission's responsibility is to represent all of the people, not the LDS people, regardless of whether they're LDS or not. They're there to represent all of the people, and not the majority of the people. So it shouldn't matter how many people are there supporting this, because the commission's job is to look at the codes and to enforce the codes. These people bought their house in residential areas, zoned to certain heights, expecting that everyone was going to be playing by those same rules. So when the county says, 6 times, 7 times higher than everybody else, well, you're my faith, and that temple's important to me. So throw all the rules out, move on in. That's not what the commission's job is. The commission's job is to look at the rules and say, are you in compliance or not? And if they're not in compliance, they shouldn't be building there. And they should say, go down the street into downtown or wherever allows the 200-foot limit and build it there. And if there's nowhere that allows a 200-foot limit, then build your temple less than 200 to whatever height that it's zoned for. We're just asking you to play by the same rules as everybody else. You don't get special treatment simply because you're a religion, because other people, to them, that beautiful night sky, that beautiful valley view is why they moved there. It's why they invested their entire their life savings, their retirement savings into their home to move into this valley to have that. And because one group says, our temple's more important than your night sky, we get to destroy your night sky. That's just wrong. And the church needs to start considering the neighbors when they build these temples. They need to start looking at the codes, because we're seeing from these emails that it doesn't appear that they're behaving in a Christian manner that you would expect people to behave when they're building in a neighborhood and they have neighbors that are going to care about this.
Yeah, I think that's true. Do we have one final slide? I think we do have a final one. And I think I think what you described is happening in both Cody and Heber. And that's why it's so interesting to watch both of them with exactly what you said: consideration for communities, consideration for neighbors, consideration for people. Now in Cody, the LDS members are not the majority, yet they're positioned where they're able sort of to act and perhaps push things through a voting process as if they were the majority. And in Heber, I think it's probably about half and half. And so you just see these dynamics happening. And you wonder if there's concern for how things will be after the temple is built, regardless of where it's built, community relations. Is there any thought for that ahead of time? Do you want to come out of this with a building, but, the residents are just horrified at the process and the treatment? I don't think that's probably what they want. And I don't know if they realize that may be what's happening, but especially in Cody, where the LDS church is a minority, boy, we see a lot of people confused and very, wouldn't you say, distraught over what is happening and not understanding what this organization is. And
seeing the church talk out of both sides of their mouth. They're saying, oh, we want you to participate in this. And then they sue you when you try to say this isn't right or we want to make changes. You see, we see that same thing happening with the Tulsa temple that just got announced. The church in this write-up, they said you should educate yourself and become knowledgeable on these issues. Well, in Tulsa, they wrote a letter to the community saying, we just announced the temple. Do not tell your neighbors where it's at.
Yeah, to the LDS community, they said.
To the LDS community. There's no reason to share any information. We will put it out when we're ready to put it out. Well, how do you educate yourself when there's no information to educate yourself with?
Yeah, I was confused by that letter, because as soon as you tell somebody not to talk about something, everyone goes, what is it? Why? What are we not supposed to talk about? So yeah, it definitely drew attention. So I don't know. I think you do see that. I just, and the residents that we're dealing with in both cities are not LDS. Although there are LDS supporters of, relocating the temple in both places, but the ones that we're dealing with directly are not LDS, and they didn't know a lot about the LDS church prior to this. And it's been really interesting to just watch them sort of start out by saying, we're all Christian, we all have our own denominations, we'll work this out. And then to get to this point where they just don't even know what hit them. They don't even know what's happening. I remember the Heber residents, when we first started talking to them, they talked about that initial meeting where some planners had come from the church and they had their citizens group and they had a lot of information and questions. And they went to this meeting at a stake president's house and they said, we felt completely unheard. And at the very end, they just said, well, we are going to do what we're going to do. So I think it might be a way of operating that worked in the past, but I don't know if it works so well now, because there's free flow of information everywhere. People are aware and people know how to voice their concerns, and they're very civic minded and they're very concerned about their city and the legacy of the city. This is what we hear from both residents group, is that, once this is built, it's there forever. It changes everything, which is why they're trying so hard, to protect the land. These are both pristine areas. That's the difference. And I think both of us have said before, I live right next to a temple. It fits in perfectly to the landscape. There was never any pushback on it. It met all the zoning requirements and the traffic, everything was fine. You live next to several temples and there they are. You don't think twice about it. But, I would just suggest go into an area, find out what the community wants. Where will this be? an asset to the community instead of something that causes these problems and divisiveness. So,
well, they've built these things to be showy, and
that's it. Yeah.
And that's the problem to me. Build a temple, go worship in a temple. It doesn't have to be this showy that everyone has to see it and it has to stand above every other structure that anyone makes. Someone had said, these are not for show to me on one of our text messages. And I drove from Layton down to your house, and on that, I counted, I could see 6 or 7 different temples off of I-15 between Layton and Utah County. Now, I didn't see 7 bars. I didn't see 7 other churches. I didn't see liquor stores. They're not built that gaudy, but I saw these temples. They're built to be seen. And that's where people are going, build it in to fit with the rest of the community. But you trying to make this stand out and break every code that everyone else has to apply for so that you can have your special religious exemption, that's what's ticking people off.
It is.
Build it the size, light it the same as other buildings, and you fit in.
Yeah. And then it'll be a welcome part of the community. Exactly. Yeah. Like the temple I live right next to, it is pretty. It is over there. It's not bothering anybody at all. And people love it. So there was a little bit of a thought here in that letter that they sent out to Heber to kind of address some of the concerns. I thought this was interesting. It kind of sums up what we've been saying. It's an answer to the concern, why won't the church listen to the concerns of residents and build a temple in another location or make it smaller and shorter? So the church knows that's a concern. And this letter that they sent to Heber, they're going to address this concern, that question. And so they say its massing and steeple, talking about the temple, is an architectural expression of religious faith and is intended to draw the religious adherent skyward toward the divine, right? And I've heard this before from other people. It has to have a tower. It has to, because in our eyes, that makes us think of the divine. Then it says, a temple is considered a sacred and holy place by the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is true. And the church reserves the right to design the temple for the purpose it is built, to unite families for eternity through gospel ordinances. Well, and that's interesting to me. The church reserves the right. Well, there are many other people in the community that also reserve the right to appreciate and worship in their way too. So again, it's sort of a can't we all get along? Don't you think, Landon?
That's an SEC response right there, where they basically say, we don't have to follow the law because we're a religion. We get to do whatever we want. Reserve the right to build a temple. Just make it fit the zoning requirements. What you're doing isn't reserving the right you can design it to the requirements of the area you're building it in. I was just in Philadelphia, saw the Philadelphia Temple. It's there with a bunch of other there's high-rise buildings around it. It does not stick out. It's blends in with the rest of the city. You built it in the right place. That's all anyone's asking. Build it in the right place where it's zoned for. You don't get a special exemption just because you claim that God told you to, because the rest of the world doesn't believe God told you to build that building. You're just building a building and it needs to conform. That's what they're asking. Wow.
There it is. Landon has said it. Well, let's end by telling all of our listeners and viewers how they can support the citizens group if they would like to. So with Cody on Facebook, you can go to Preserve Our Cody Neighborhood. It's a Facebook page and they have all kinds of information there. How to donate, that's a big part of it, because as we said before, in Cody, the city has stepped back from everything. It's just a done deal for the city. And so it's a residents group themselves that are funding all of this to see if they can hopefully facilitate some changes and have the temple built in a more appropriate spot. So Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods. And then, and we'll put links to all this in the show notes. For Heber, there is, let's see, Heber Temple Info is a Facebook page, and also Wasatch Dang it. Now I'm going to forget. What is it, Landon? Wasatch Dark Skies. We'll put it all in the links, and you can just reach out to us if you'd like to know how to support either of these groups. Have we forgotten anything, Landon? There'll be like Landon said, we just got the letter that the Heber residents are going to be presenting to the county today, and so we just got that. What will be last night. We're kind of talking in the future. So we didn't have a time to go through that entire thing, but it does address a lot of these concerns. So I'm sure we'll be doing another update. But please comment. Tell us what you think. Are you in Cody? Are you in Heber? Do you have any anything that you're involved in as far as any of these are concerned? What are your thoughts about this? It's a very touchy issue, and I understand surrounding the temple, it really is, but our concern is just, let's have every voice be heard. Wouldn't you say that's what it is, Landon?
Absolutely.
Let's work together as a community and find a place where this temple will be, cherished by everyone in the community and be an asset to the community instead of something that becomes very divisive as far as the means that it was built. So please like and subscribe. If you would like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit the notification bell. And if you would like to support Mormonish Podcast financially, we have links to PayPal and Venmo in the show notes. And we certainly appreciate all of you who do donate to us. We absolutely love you guys. We love all our viewers and our listeners. And we'll be back again with another update at some point, won't we, Landon? I think we need to take a nap first.
I think so. I need to go to bed.
Yeah, we got to do something. This is getting to be too much, this late night podcasting. We have dark circles under our eyes. Oh my gosh. So, all right. Thanks everybody for Mormonish. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.